Many people, when they think of a defensive firearm, their mind goes right to the AR-15 or a handgun. I have spent the last 2 months with this Marlin 336 XLR chambered in 30-30, which has been cut down, threaded, and modified by Extreme Gunworks, which is a local gun shop to me, trying to answer the question, is there a role for a modern tactical lever action rifle? Let's get right into it. Tactical lever guns. When I say that term, there's going to be a couple things that's going to happen. Either you're like, okay, I'm kind of interested in this, or you're one of those people that's like, whoa, don't go there. I have never seen such a mixed response from gun pictures and videos that I've posted than when I've put content up about this Marlin 336 XLR. Guys, this video is one that I am extremely excited about because it is such a unique topic. Most people don't ever even consider the idea of a tactical lever action rifle. And really, let's be honest, it's for good reason because in general, lever action rifles are pretty outdated when it comes to a defensive role for a firearm. Sure, they are all over hunting camps across America. People still use them for hunting all the time. Plinking, you can get them in 22s all the way up to 45-70 and all kinds of crazy calibers in between. So the versatility is there, the reliability is there, accuracy, all of that stuff is there. But when we're looking at defensive firearms, they usually have a couple very key characteristics that are going to help them perform really well in a defensive role. Now, this video is obviously just my opinion. I'm not preaching gospel here. I'm not trying to convince you that you definitely need to consider this rifle as one of your own, but I'm just simply giving you my experience with this Marlin lever action rifle. Now, I have had this thing for about 2 months now, and I have put probably close to 600 rounds through it in that time. That's probably more ammunition than most people are ever going to run through their lever action rifles, but hey, I'm not most people. I like to push the limits and find those little niche areas where I can explore and push the boundaries and see if what I'm doing is realistic or not. So the first part of this video that I wanted to get into was a little bit about the specs on this rifle. Again, this one is from Marlin. This is a 336 XLR, but the thing you're going to notice is this is absolutely not factory. This isn't something that you just pick up off the shelf from Marlin, have it shipped to your local dealer, and you get this. This is modified by a local gun shop near me called Extreme Gunworks. They did all kinds of work to this rifle, but before I get into that, I'm going to go over some of the basic specs of the factory version of this rifle. The 336 XLR is a 30-30 caliber rifle, so it's a very popular cartridge. It's very well known for taking out white-tailed deer, medium-sized game, things like that at medium distances. It comes factory with a 24-inch barrel that is a 1 in 12 twist. So it's definitely not a super fast twist barrel, especially for subsonic ammunition, but it has worked well and I've seen pretty good accuracy from the subsonic ammunition, so I'm very pleased. this would be a perfect rifle, even out of the box, for anything from groundhogs to white-tailed deer. The rifle comes in at about 7.5 pounds. The tube holds 5 rounds, so it is definitely not a high-capacity firearm, but when you look at the role that the lever-action rifle typically plays for a hunting rifle, that's okay. For a hunting application, typically 5 rounds is more than enough. More ammunition when you're hiking miles back in the middle of nowhere can just become cumbersome. But we're not looking at this from a hunting application. I'm looking at this trying to answer the question, is this rifle something that would be viable for me to defend my home and property with? That's what I'm really interested in finding out. So now that we touched on a couple of the basic specifications from factory, let's go over what was done to this thing from Extreme Gunworks. Up on the front of this rifle, you're going to notice that there is an ASR muzzle brake from Silencer Co. They did chop the 24-inch barrel down to a little bit more than 16 inches, topped it off with a 5/8 by 24 thread pitch so you can screw on any 308 accessory, whether that's just a flash hider or it is a quick attach mount for your favorite suppressor. The length of barrel being a lot shorter is going to help with the maneuverability, and this rifle is extremely maneuverable. Of the barrel getting chopped, they did a Cerakote job on this where they refinished the receiver, the barrel, the lever, and then they polished and cleaned up a lot of the internal action components. So the action on this gun is extremely smooth, and you can even hear that from the sound of it. Everything about it is just effortless. The trigger pull isn't terrible. It's definitely not as good as some of the precision bolt guns that I've played around with, and it is absolutely not as good as my AR-15s with drop-in triggers, but it is acceptable. I did not see it as an issue. It wasn't too heavy, gritty, or any of that stuff. Up front, we have a Midwest Industries M-Lock rail. This is one of the biggest aspects that changes this rifle, in my opinion. Just the ability to throw a vert grip on, or even have the ability to throw on, for example, my Boscobel bipod, which if you have not checked out this video, definitely check out my YouTube and give it a watch. This is where you need to be able to take a weapon and turn it into a defensive kind of platform. You need to have the ability and modularity to be able to adapt to different situations quickly and easily. A lot of people are thinking, oh, well, I don't really need that. And that's true. You could have this lever action. It still holds the same amount of ammo with or without the rail. But I'm telling you, when you throw a little vert grip on and you can manipulate it more like an AR-15, it just feels super comfortable in your hands. On top of the M-Lock rail, we have a Picatinny rail section on top, which has allowed me to mount my Strike Eagle 1:6 optic on the top of this rifle. Now, I'm going to say that a cantilever mount on this rifle is a bit tall. I threw this on because I stole it from my 5.56. I'm working on that rifle right now and doing some modifications. So I didn't want to go out and buy just a completely new optic before I got a feel for what I wanted on this. This lever action for defensive situations would probably benefit just from a regular red dot, some kind of reflex sight or a micro dot. That would be, in my opinion, one of the best options you could throw onto this thing. But nonetheless, the 1:6 works really well. If I decide to keep it on this rifle, I'm probably going to just throw a lower mount, because what you'll notice is I have to keep my head pretty high to see through the scope itself. Extreme Gunworks also goes into the receiver. It's been cleaned up. There's certain parts that are polished, and the action, like I said, is extremely smooth because of that. Now, this lever gun is pretty unique. It still has the half cock like a lot of lever guns have, but it does have a safety on the back, and that safety has screwed me up from time to time where I've pushed the rifle out just expecting for it to go off, and I've forgotten that the safety is activated. And even with the safety on, it's going to allow the hammer to drop forward, and you'll get a click rather than a bang. And then you end up racking it because you think it's empty, you toss a good shell on the ground, and that's a little bit frustrating. But it's just something that you have to keep in mind as you're training with it and working your way through it. So that pretty much sums up the work that was done by Extreme Gunworks. This all adds to the package, which now, in my opinion, has become a very capable lever action rifle that has now taken a step into our century and become a lot more modern and a lot more refined versus the standard offering from Marlin. This thing with my Silencer Co. Omega suppressor is stupid quiet. That is the best way that I know of to describe this rifle. I'm running Keystone munitions, subsonic ammo, and that is all that I've been running with this over the last 2 months. I chose the subsonic ammunition, number one, because I want to support a local company manufacturing the ammunition. But on top of that, in my mind, I'm looking at this as a defensive role kind of rifle, something that at night I could grab it, I could deal with whatever situation might come up, and I could do it very quietly without blowing my ears out. Also for hunting, subsonic ammo is very potent. You can take down even medium-sized game with the proper bullet that expands on impact. I wanted to go over a couple things that I really liked about this rifle. And for one, it handles really well. I really don't like rifles that have super long barrels. I don't like 20-inch, 24-inch barrels typically. I really like a 16 to an 18-inch barrel, especially if we're talking about defensive situations or hunting. I like maneuverability, and this thing really does maneuver well, whether you are shooting freehand, shooting with the bipod, reaching out and touching at 200 yards. This thing does phenomenal. Transitioning between the TA targets, steel targets on our range is effortless. With the 1:6 scope, it also keeps a little bit of the effect like a red dot, where you can keep it on one power, just stare right through the optic, put it on target, squeeze, bang, and you end up hitting the steel. It just feels like a very maneuverable, very rugged build. And it's not too heavy. That's the biggest thing. You're chopping off about 8 inches of the barrel, so you're saving that amount of weight. You're getting rid of the wooden or laminate foregrip. You're putting on a very light aluminum M-LOK rail. All of these things are just adding up to create this very refined package that I'm very surprised to say that I really, really love. And I'm saying that because I'm not typically a lever action guy. In fact, I don't normally touch them with a 10-foot pole. They have a little bit of a sweet spot in my heart for them because they do have a lot of history behind them in our country. The technological advances of the 1800s is pretty insane. And when you think about the time period where lever action rifles came from, they're just pretty cool in general. But they never really had a place in my modern arsenal. I more or less thought of them as a novelty thing that I'm going to jump out on the range and plink with. One of the other things that I really liked about this is the action is super smooth. The action typically didn't have any hang-ups or any hold-ups. I had an occasional fail to feed or a double feed or something if I overran the lever too quickly or I didn't have the bullets seated all the way into the magazine tube. So it's definitely a little bit finicky. There's definitely areas that you have to pay attention to when you're loading your ammunition, when you're cycling the action. Just make sure that you get a full push forward and a full pull back, and then you're going to get ammunition fed through the rifle. One of the other things that I really appreciate is this doesn't have a massive lever. I'm not a huge fan at all of lever action rifles with a big loop or a long lever. This is short and compact enough that even when shooting with a bipod, you can work the action even while laying prone or sitting with the bipod very compressed. It all works very well. Nothing interferes with the ground or anything like that, which is a big bonus to me. One other point that I wanted to touch on was accuracy, and I did not spend a ton of time with the accuracy department on this rifle. I didn't sandbag it or put it into our rest and lock it in and try to really dial in how accurate this thing could possibly be. I just sent quick groups on paper at 50 yards for the video just to show you kind of what you would expect from this rifle if you just, say you saw a deer, you threw your bipod out real quick, set it on the table, and bang, fired away. It did perform, in my opinion, with acceptable results. Now the rifle itself, to me, was never meant to be a tack driver. The cartridge itself is limited, so I'm not expecting 1-inch groups at 100 yards. And at 50 yards, we did have probably 2-inch groups, depending on how slow I went. If I really took my time like I did on a previous range day, we were sitting around 1 to 1.25-inch groups at 50 yards. More than acceptable to take a deer out to 100 yards or even 200 yards. But please also bear in mind that we're talking about subsonic ammunition. Really slow, heavy bullets coming out of this gun. Unfortunately, when I was shooting this video, I did not have any full power supersonic ammunition to put down range, but I would assume that with the full power ammunition or even hand loads that you would make on your own for hunting applications, you probably could tighten that group up substantially. So that's pretty much it for all the things that I like. It's a super refined package. It's compact, it's maneuverable, it seems to be a reliable build. I want to also now dive into a couple things that I really don't like about this rifle. So one of the biggest things that's going to hold this rifle back, in my opinion, from becoming one of my defensive weapons would be the magazine capacity. It holds 5 in the tube, and you can actually top it off with 1 in the chamber. So we're talking about 6 rounds. And 30-30 in general is about the ballistics of a 300 blackout. So now when we're looking at an AR-15 like I have over here, like my 5-inch 300 blackout versus this, obviously that 300 blackout has a huge advantage because it has a detachable magazine. You can stick a 25, 30 round magazine in it, and you're going to be able to just keep on running and feeding that thing ammunition. Now again, I think it's important that we bear in mind that this rifle was never meant to be a fighting rifle. It was meant to be a hunting rifle. So that's why you only have 5 rounds. And by nature of how a lever action rifle typically works, they typically use a tubular magazine. A 30-30 cartridge is super long, so you're only going to get so many of them into the magazine tube. So to me, that's a negative and a downside to the rifle. But it's not a downside enough that I would not consider it. So one of the other downsides of a lever action rifle is you have to manually work the action every time yourself. Now that's not the end of the world, I understand that, but there is a huge benefit to a semi-automatic platform where it self-loads after every single shot. That's going to keep you moving quicker, and it's going to keep you on target quicker than potentially working the action every shot like you would with a pump action or a lever action rifle or shotgun. Now at this point in the video, I do want to bring up the fact that I did have a pretty decent malfunction with this rifle. It wasn't, looking back, anything super major, but if you look on the side here where this little dust cover is, it's a spring-loaded cover that helps you guide ammunition into the magazine tube. It jammed up on me the one range day, and it just popped in and then rotated up and got stuck in the feed ramp that helps guide ammunition up into the chamber. So I took the gun apart and cleaned it, and then it ran okay, but then did the same thing again. And what I noticed is the actual screw head that holds this little piece into the receiver popped off and broke off. So this was just kind of floating around in there, and it was jamming up with the bolt inside of the receiver. So that had me a little bit worried about the longevity of the rifle and the manufacturing, but what I think happened is the screw loosened up, backed out a little bit, and it just allowed a little bit of play inside of the receiver. So I bought the new parts, a new screw, put a little bit of Loctite on the screw, and all in all with shipping it was around 20 bucks for parts. So that's not terrible, but that's something to consider. It makes me question, can a lever action rifle stand the test of time and come back for more after thousands of rounds? And honestly, I don't know, because it was not designed to fill that kind of a role. So that is something to consider if you're adding this to your lineup for a defensive weapon. That's it for all of the negatives that I see with this rifle. There's nothing major that's going to keep me from considering sticking this thing next to my nightstand. But bigger than that is the question, what role does this thing play? The 336 is an awesome rifle from the box. But with these modifications from Extreme Gunworks, now we have stepped into a modern era of lever action rifles that can accommodate everything from your flashlight, vertical foregrips, grip stops, bipods, suppressors, the whole 9 yards. You now have a weapon that can be modified to suit your needs. That to me is pretty cool. So what I would see this to be used for is a property defense rifle, obviously a hunting rifle, something that if there's ever any predators in the woods, whether that could even be bears or coyotes or wolves, this would be a gun that could potentially fill that role in pretty well. But bear in mind that the 30-30 caliber is nothing super hot. It's nothing to write home about. But it is a potent little caliber when used within the parameters that it was designed for. I could definitely see this thing in my safe or even up on my wall in my bedroom to be used as a secondary rifle to my AR-15. In my opinion, it doesn't replace my AR-15. It just gives me an opportunity to jump onto a different platform that I'm not typically used to, that I don't typically use, and just to expand my knowledge about different firearms and how they work and how you could put them through use in a combative's role. And I spent a ton of time on the range working VTAC barricades, running around, shooting and moving, taking this lever action rifle and doing everything that I typically do with guns like my Galil back here or my 300 Blackout SBR. I did all of the same stuff just to see where it shines. And although it doesn't fill the role perfectly, it does have a lot of traits that it brings to the table that maybe you can't have high capacity magazines, or maybe you can't even own an AR-15 where you live. This might be a gun that is perfectly legal for you, that you can now have a viable option sitting next to your bedstand or in your truck or in your office. The other thing to consider is Marlin also has their 1895 CST, which comes factory threaded, and it is in 357 or 38 special. I'm going to put that 357 head-to-head against this 30-30 to kind of try to figure out even more, where do these things fit in the realm of defensive firearms? So the biggest question is this lever action rifle for you? That question is 100% up to you. If you made it this far in the video, I really do appreciate it. I'm not trying to sell you on this rifle. I'm not trying to convince you that you absolutely have to have this lever action rifle. But I think that if you have the money and you're interested at all, it might be worth giving Extreme Gunworks a call to get them to quote you on a package, because they have a ton of different options, lots of different lever action styles, manufacturers, and models to choose from. They can absolutely get you set up. The pricing is going to vary dependent on what you want done. So please keep that in mind. These things retail for around $1,000 to $1,100. So you're going to take that price and you're going to add on customization fees, Cerakote, threading, all that stuff. So it does get a little bit pricey. That might be a turnoff to some people, and I should have added that into the negative. When we're looking at an AR versus this, it wouldn't be hard to wrap up $2,000 into something like this. Especially with an optic, you throw the bipod, you could be even more than that into it. Depends on what kind of work you have done to it, what kind of Cerakote, how much work did they do, did they chop the barrel, did they thread it? All that stuff is going to affect the price. But that price point alone might be enough to turn some of you off. So it's just something I want to throw out there and for you to keep in consideration when you are thinking about potentially getting a lever action rifle like this. Guys, you made it through the video. This was one that I've been trying to get done for so long, but after having those issues on the range, it kind of put the video off for a week, and I didn't want to put out a lot of content about the issues that I had because I was still trying to figure out what was going on with the rifle. I'm happy to say that I think it was just that screw backing out that caused the malfunction. The new parts ran flawlessly, and I put about 400 rounds through this gun today. If you have a 30-30 that's threaded, and you run your suppressor, and you're looking for subsonic ammunition, please check out our website, tatargets.com. There is now an ammunition tab on the home page and the top bar. We are going to be selling this ammunition directly off of our website, shipped to your door. Obviously, all restrictions for your state apply. There are certain states that we're not going to be able to ship to. So if you're in one of those states, just bear in mind we unfortunately cannot ship directly to you. If you would like to order in those states, we'll have to ship to a dealer in your state. This ammunition is being provided by a partnership between us and Keystone Munitions. Keystone Munitions makes really fantastic ammunition in Pennsylvania. They're right here local to me. I have enjoyed my friendship with Jeremy and getting to know him and his business. So definitely, guys, if you have a 30-30 that's threaded, keep in mind that we are going to be stocking this ammunition and we will be able to ship it directly to you. As always, guys, I really appreciate you sticking through this and watching till the end. I also just realized that we hit 2,000 subscribers, which is nuts because I was going to do a 1,000 subscriber giveaway. And then I was waiting to do a 2,000 subscriber giveaway. And now we passed 2,000 subscribers. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but at some point I'm going to do a thank you giveaway. So make sure you're following me on Instagram at Keystone Carry. If you ever have any questions or whatever else, just shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's the best way to get in touch with me. And guys, I didn't drop this on Instagram yet, but my website is live, www.keystonecarry.us. Go check it out. Right now, all it is just kind of a synopsis of the photography that I do, some of the work that I've done with companies for photography, videography, a little bit about my story, and other things like that. So if you're interested in seeing that, definitely do that. And eventually, I'm going to be offering things like my hat here, my Keystone Carry hat, which is pretty freaking awesome if you ask me. I'm going to be offering things like that on the website, just as another way that you can provide support to me. And look, I'm not going to beg you guys for support. My main business is TA Targets. I'm pursuing my dreams and my passions. I'm building a business over there. And that's why I'm not begging you to join a Patreon account or do any of that other stuff, at least at this point. I just appreciate you so much for just even watching my videos. Guys, thank you, and until next time, stay well, stay safe, and I will see you guys in the next video.